Hey, Elon here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Okay.
Hey, Elon. Hey.
Hello there.
Hello.
Hey. We see you.
Welcome.
This is wild.
It's just my butt talking.
Elon, are you wearing your short shorts?
Yeah, that's me.
Are you celebrating anything in particular with your short shorts?
No, I'm just trying to look sexy in these tight pants with the fabulous red and the gold.
Are the short shorts still available to be purchased?
Sorry, I got a small Sparky dog.
Elon, I think you might have broken. I'm not sure about the internet, but definitely Clubhouse. This room is easily the biggest room the app has had, and you're just putting all sorts of pressure on it. This is amazing. This is a true historic moment.
All right. I mean, is it working?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
All right, we're going to just give it a minute because we promised we'd start at 10 p.m. and I think a few more people are going to try and trickle in, and then we're going to we'll get going for what should be probably a historic first ever time for you on Clubhouse. It's going to be amazing. So just give it 30 seconds and we'll get going.
Okay. By the way, can you let in Vlad from Robinhood?
I think the room.
We can.
Okay, good.
I'm sorry, Sriram. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, my phone just blew up when we started the room with people trying to get in. So we're going to try and get as many people as possible. Okay, why don't we get started? Okay. First of all, everyone, thank you for joining us for what is really a historic episode. I will come to our very, very special guest in a second. But just to quickly introduce the rest of the room, we have Gary Tan, of Initialized Capital. We have my significantly better other half, Aarti Ramamurthy, whom Elon you have met when you took us on a tour of SpaceX. We have Steven Sinofsky of ex-Microsoft fame, and we have the one and only Mark Andreessen. But to introduce our special guest, and this person truly needs no introduction, the founder of Tesla, SpaceX, The Boring Company, Neuralink, PayPal, and I'm sure there's a bunch more. Elon Musk, welcome to Clubhouse.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Okay, Aarti, I think you're first.
This is awesome. Yeah. So Elon, again, welcome. This is really fun. We've been waiting all day. This is the longest wait to 10 p.m. because we just couldn't wait to get this going. I hope this is as much fun by the end of it for you as it is for us. First question from me is when are we going to get to Mars?
Well, I think we'll get to, when will we get the first people to Mars? I think we have a decent shot of doing that in about, I'd say I call it 5 years, something like that. So Earth and Mars sync up every 26 months. That's when we're in it's roughly the same quadrant of the solar system, and where we can do an interplanetary transfer. And so we had one about 6 months ago, so about a year and a half, there'll be another one. So figure, I don't know, 5.5 years.
5.5 years. So what does it take from here to that point? Like, what are the milestones you think for us to get to, 5 years out, we are landing on Mars?
Well, we've got to make a Starship fly, get to go to orbit and back repeatedly. Mm-hmm. I mean, the essential elements are you need a fully reusable, you need a fully and rapidly reusable orbital rocket. This is the holy grail of rocketry. So no one has ever succeeded in creating a fully reusable rocket. And it can't just be fully reusable, it needs to be rapidly reusable, so it doesn't take several months of refurbishment between flights. It needs to be much like aircraft, where the cost of an air flight is the biggest component of that is fuel. You can't just be throwing rockets away every time.
Right.
And then you need to have orbital refilling, so where you can send the ship up to orbit, then send another ship up, dock with a transfer propellant, so that you can load up to being almost full with propellant, and then go to Mars. If you've got a large, fully and rapidly reusable rocket with orbital refilling that uses high efficiency, low cost propellant, then you can go to Mars. And then one last thing is, on Mars, you need local propellant production. So you take CO2 out of the atmosphere, combine it with water ice, H2O, to create CH4, methane, and oxygen. And if you have those elements, life can become multiplanetary, and we can have a self-sustaining city on Mars, which I think is one of the most important things we could possibly do for ensuring the long-term existence of consciousness.
Yeah, I think, that makes sense. Sorry, sure, I'm go for it.
Yeah, Elon, you've spoken about this often, which is, expanding the scope of consciousness and how it is tied to multiplanetary life. Could you explain what that means for you and why that matters to you?
Sure. Well, so originally I had sort of kind of an existential crisis when I was a kid, trying to figure out what's the meaning of life, why are we here, what's the point of it all, is it all meaningless? I got quite depressed, actually, and sad about it, and then the thing that kind of broke me out of it was reading Douglas Adams's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where he essentially pointed out that the universe is the answer, and really the hard part is figuring out what questions to ask about the answer that is the universe. Yeah, exactly. He was trying to make fun of the fact that the answer is the easy part, but the questions are the hard part. So in order for us to gain a better understanding of what questions to ask, or to understand what it's all about, we have to increase the scope and scale of consciousness, so that we're better able to figure out which questions to ask and answer them. So the longer, the broader in scope, larger in scale that consciousness is, the more likely we are to be able to answer these questions and figure out what the heck's going on. Why are we here? To answer the fundamental questions. And I think there's arguably a great filter that we face with, will we become a multi-planet species or not? We'd be surprised if out there in our galaxy and others that there are a whole bunch of dead one-planet civilizations that prospered for a while. They might have prospered for millions of years, but then gradually the civilization collapsed for reasons external or internal, and that was that. All civilizations go through an arc where they grow up in technology complexity, but then they don't keep going up. Over time they decline, they fall, and this has happened obviously with, if you're a student of history, with many civilizations in the past. You can look at ancient Egypt. 5,000 years ago there was the Great Pyramid of Giza, but then the people living there forgot how to build pyramids after a while, and then they forgot how to read hieroglyphics. There's obviously, Gibbon's famous book about the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, and how they had advanced technology in terms of roads, aqueducts, plumbing, and so forth, and then basically people forgot about it. The ancient Sumerians, Babylonians, all these things they've all gone through a similar arc, which suggests that most likely we will go through such an arc ourselves, and we'll be arguably less resilient to recovery because of globalization. So I think for the first time in the 4.5 billion year history of Earth, it has been possible to extend life beyond Earth and make life multiplanetary. And this window of opportunity may be open for a long time. I hope it is, or it may be open for a short time. And I think it would be wise for us to assume that it's open for a short time. I'm an optimist, not a pessimist, but you have to say, like, there's some chance it's only open for a short time, and we should take advantage of this brief window of opening where we can transport life to make life multiplanetary, and humanity is essentially the agent of life in this process. And I think we almost have an obligation to ensure that the creatures of Earth continue, even if there is a calamity on Earth, which, as I said, could be man-made or it could be some natural calamity. As if you look at the fossil record, there are many mass extinctions.
Yeah, I think all of that makes sense, and I think we've talked about this before. I think one other question I have is, when we get there, we have to set up the whole society. We have to set up civilization there. How will the whole thing work in your mind? Like, everything from what does it mean to have internet connection in Mars, all the way to like governments and rules and laws and everything.
Yeah, I think all those things need to happen, just as they happen in the U.S. and happen in every country. And I would not presume to prescribe what should happen there. I think the important part is just that we get people there and we get the equipment necessary to establish a self-sustaining civilization, at least one self-sustaining city. And I think the key threshold of when we would pass the great filter, or this particular great filter, is Mars sufficiently self-sustaining such that if the ships stop coming from Earth for any reason, it could be something massive or something banal. I mean, civilization on Earth could end with a bang or a whimper. But either way, if the ships stop coming from Mars, does Mars die out or not? And Mars only has to be missing one little ingredient, like the equivalent of vitamin C, and it will survive for a while, but it will not. But it will eventually die out. So it's kind of getting a state on Mars to pass that critical threshold where it is self-sustaining. And are we able to do that before some calamity or a gradual decline in civilization occurs that prevents the ships from going there? That's the key threshold. I mean, in a more pithy way, is like, does a city on Mars become self-sustaining? Which comes first, a self-sustaining city on Mars or World War III?
Yeah.
If you kind of let yourself dream out over the next few decades, like, what would you consider success? Like, let's say they get through the first 5 years and even the first 10 years. Like, what do you think is possible to build on Mars 10 years in, 20 years in, 30 years in after first arrival?
Well, I think Mars will start off being very, very tiny, just like a tiny little outpost. And by the way, it's going to be very dangerous. Sometimes people think, oh, is this like some escape hatch for rich people? I'm like, no, it will be dangerous, hard work. It's going to be, you're out there on the frontier. There are far more ways to die there than there are on Earth. And a tremendous amount of hard work. But it will be, I think, fun and a great adventure. But it will not be a luxurious thing. That is for sure. Not for quite some time to go. But we've got to build a propellant plant. We've got to build get the solar power going, get the the food production going, start creating the necessities. We need an iron ore refinery. We need all of the sort of fundamentals of industry in order to ensure that Mars is a self-sustaining planet. And then over time, like, this would take a while, but you could terraform the planet and make it Earth-like, mostly by warming it up. So yeah.
So, as you talk about this, I mean, honestly, what comes to mind is sort of the idea that a Martian civilization, although obviously imported from Earth, it will quickly evolve to be quite a bit tougher by necessity. And just the mental image just leaping in my mind is the Spartans in ancient Greece. Like, do you think the sort of vector of civilization will unfold differently as a consequence of how difficult it's going to be to get it going?
Yeah, it probably will. I think so.
And so then maybe we don't just have a backup, right? Maybe we actually have an alternative, like and the ability to actually see two like fundamentally different civilizations flourish.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that you can only go to Mars every 2 years and that it's a 6 month journey, although I think we can over time get that potentially as low as 1 month, but still, you can't go to Mars when Earth is on the other side of the sun from Mars, like the times where Mars is literally on the other side of the sun. You can't get no matter what you do. So that time gap would mean that that there'd be essentially a new group of people arriving roughly every 2 years. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting. People would probably trace their I came on this this particular sun, Earth-Mars synchronization event. I don't know, but like I said, the important thing is like that we have established Mars as a self-sustaining civilization, and that we have done whatever we can to ensure the long-term continuance of consciousness as we know it. Because so as far as we can tell, we're the only the light of consciousness, which is a delicate little candle in the dark. It's only here on Earth. I mean, it might be other places, and there's arguments that it's likely to be other places, but honestly, we have seen no sign of it. And I'm pretty sure that I would have known about it, and I've seen nothing to indicate that there's any alien civilization whatsoever. I'd be the first to jump on that in a second, but I've seen no such evidence.
Elon, that's actually something we wanted to ask you about, because in the last year, there has been multiple reported UFO sightings. There was the mysterious object that flew past our solar system. I think you just described that you haven't seen any evidence of aliens, but A, do you think we'll ever run into them? And B, if we do, have you heard of dark forest theory from the three-body problem? How do you think we should think about aliens?
Yeah, I'm trying to be strict in the scientific sense of the word, of saying I've seen not a single piece of conclusive evidence. So that doesn't mean there aren't aliens. I'm just literally saying I've seen nothing that could not be explained by other means, and where the probable explanation by other means is much more likely than this alien technology. So, and for people that say like there are sightings of aliens, I'm like, listen, man, the resolution of the picture needs to be at least like 7-Eleven ATM good, okay? I mean, we can't have that fuzzy Loch Ness monster bullshit, It's like, come on, we've got like, was that like a 500 megapixel camera? What are you talking about? Where do you even find that thing? It's got to be at least like iPhone 6 level or something. I don't know.
Can I ask one more Mars question?
Sure.
If that's okay for you. So, Elon, you famously have a pile of really beautiful kids. I know you care about them a great deal, as all parents do. What would your response be if they start coming to you when they turn 18 or 22 and they say, Dad, we're now that you've landed us on Mars and there's a colony forming, like I really want to go.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about, say, the third or fourth set of landings on Mars, I think that'd probably be I'd be okay with that. Although I've polled them so far and none of them say they want to go, so they may change their minds, but currently they're not chomping at the bit to go to Mars.
Okay.
Interesting.
Elon, okay. So I think for folks who may not know this, I think we originally met over Twitter, and it's just safe to say, and I want to move on from Mars to memes. It is safe to say that you might be the master of the memes. And in fact, you had a quote, "Who controls the memes controls the universe." Could you just explain what you meant by that and how you became this person?
Well, it's a play on words from Dune. Who controls the spice controls the universe. And then if memes are spice, then it's memes. There's a little bit of truth to it in that, like how do you what is it that influences the zeitgeist? Like how do things become interesting to people? And memes like actually kind of a complex form of communication that's that like a picture says 1,000 words and maybe a meme says 10,000 words. It's a complex picture with a bunch of meaning in it, and it can be it's aspirationally funny, So, I don't know. I love memes. I think they can be very insightful. Throughout history, I think the symbolism in general has powerfully affected people. So, yeah.
How did you get so good at them? I mean, I remember following you many years ago. Going from that to your sea shanties meme or any one of the memes, and some of it may not be safe for work here. How did you get so
We're
good?
told that
Why do we have to be safe for work?
You don't have to be safe for work.
This doesn't work. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I guess probably. If you go back to my very early tweets, or technically I was on Twitter. I think in the very early days when there were only like maybe 10,000, less than 10,000 users. But then people were just tweeting what kind of latte they had at the University Street Starbucks, and I was like, I don't need to know this. So then I deleted my Twitter account, and then a fake person who got my Twitter account and tweeted for a few years, and then my friend Bill Lee said, "Hey, you really should be on Twitter so you can speak directly to people." So I was like, "Okay, I'll do." My friend Bill Lee convinced me to regain my Twitter account, and my early tweets are pretty racy, because I was reading this biography of Catherine the Great, so it sort of, things went crazy from there.
By the way, I like how you say that your early tweets were racy and not right now. I just like that.
Look at your profile.
Other people think he's gone crazy on Twitter. I'm like, no, I started crazy on Twitter.
But what's your favorite set of new memes, Elon? What are the new things that you're following now with respect to memes or creating?
Sorry, what was that again?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to ask you, what are the new memes that you're following or creating right now? What are the ones that are interesting to you right now?
I don't really follow memes.
You just make them?
I make some of them, and then some of them are sent to me. I have some pretty kick-ass meme dealers.
Yeah.
Wait, who's a meme dealer? Is this somebody you meet in the back alley over a signal?
Memes going at a good price.
Are there meme dealers on Mars? Wait.
You gotta have a good meme dealer.
There will be.
My friend Mike is a good meme dealer, and Claire as well, and Jake L, and quite a few others actually. I fortunately am the lucky recipient of very interesting memes.
Okay. Today you're slightly changing subjects a bit. Just on Twitter. Today you had posted about Neuralink and why people should be working there. For folks who don't know about it, I thought it was really cool. Just the possibility of it, just really fantastic. Tell us more about it. There are a lot of engineers listening on this, in this Clubhouse. What is Neuralink? Why should we care? What is possible with it?
Sure. So, the long term. Okay, so Neuralink stems from a concern I had, where I was trying to figure out, even in a benign AI scenario, how do we at least go along for the ride? So, if for those that are following AI closely, it's obviously improving dramatically. If you see look at say GPT-1 versus GPT-2 versus GPT-3, and just how radically that's improved, and just there's deep minds, and I think they've run out of games to win at basically, and there's just, and look at Tesla. It's an important thing at note I should make is Tesla actually has, I think, one of the strongest AI teams in the world, but it's an AI team focused on real world usability. So just really solving vision, perception, and control with AI. But even in a benign scenario for AI, where let's say like the AI is like just really wants to be super nice to us and make us happy. Well, how do we stay relevant and still have meaning and at least go along for the ride? That's in the good scenario, and then in terms of avoiding the bad scenario, to the degree we can couple collective human will to the outcome of artificial intelligence and what's developed in that way, I think that'll probably be a better scenario than if we're unable to effectively couple collective human will to that outcome. So, the final now, sorry, but this is getting kind of esoteric, but
we love it. We love it. Keep going.
Yeah. No,
okay, so people are already a cyborg, in that you already have a tertiary digital layer. You've got your sort of limbic system, which is your primitive drives and desires and responses, and then you've got your cortex, which is like long-term planning and thinking. Those are two biological layers, and then there's a tertiary layer, a third layer, which is digital, and you already have that in the form of your phones and computers and all your applications. You're far more powerful than a human would be without those cognitive enhancements. But the bandwidth between your cortex and your digital tertiary layer is very slow. And in fact, with the advent of phones, it got even slower. So if you're thumbing, like, say, what's the bit rate of a pair of thumbs on a phone? It's very low. I mean, let's be super generous and say it's 100 bits per second. Well, computers can communicate at trillions of bits per second. So it's, at a certain point, the computer gets smart enough. It's like the computer's just like trying to talk to a tree. Trees do sort of talk, but they talk so slow that we don't notice. So we need to improve the bandwidth, and with a direct neural interface, we can improve the bandwidth between your cortex and your digital tertiary layer by many orders of magnitude. I'd say probably at least 1,000, or maybe 10,000 or more. And we could also spend a lot more time thinking about interesting things, as opposed to taking complex thought structures, compressing them down into words, which is also, again, a very low bit rate, and then having someone else receive those words, decompress them, and then send words back at you. So a huge amount of our brain power is spent in compression, decompression, and we could be instead spending it on deeper concepts. And so if you had a Neuralink, if two people had a Neuralink, you could do conceptual telepathy, where you have a complex series of concepts, and you could just transfer them directly, uncompressed, to the other person. This would massively improve the quality of communication and the speed of it. So, and there are other sort of pretty wild things that could be done. Like you could probably save state in the brain, and so if you were to die, your state could be returned either in the form of another human body or a robot body. I mean, this is getting like really, into weird sci-fi stuff here.
This is great. This is basically like Altered
awesome.
Carbon, right? Like this is basically a plot line from Altered Carbon. Go on, love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like Altered Carbon. Yeah, exactly. But I think you could decide you want to be a robot or a person or whatever. And you wouldn't be exactly the same. So there'd be a little lost in transfer. But you can also say it's also arguably true that when you wake up in the morning, you're not exactly the same as yesterday, or the you of a month ago is not the same as the you of today. I mean, a bunch of brain cells have died, and some memories have faded, some have strengthened. There are new memories. So anyway, the point is, like, you wouldn't be. There could be something analogous to a video game, like a saved game situation, where you are able to resume, upload your last state. Yeah, kind of like Altered Carbon. Maybe lose a few memories, but mostly be you. So now that's the long-term stuff. In the short term, for Neuralink, the idea would really just be to address brain injuries or spinal injuries, and make up for whatever lost capacity somebody has with an implanted chip. So the first thing that we're going after is a wireless implanted chip that would enable someone who's a quadriplegic or tetraplegic to control a computer or mouse or their phone or really any device just by thinking. And this obviously would be a massive enabler, make life way easier for them. There have been sort of primitive versions of this device, one done with like wires sticking out of your head, but it doesn't work all the time, and you can't take it home with you. So just having, basically, you think, like, in simplistic terms, I'd say it's sort of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires that go to your brain. So Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires. So if somebody who's listening is good at designing like Fitbits, Apple Watches, phones, computers of various kinds, then actually they would be a great fit for Neuralink. So yeah, we'll probably be releasing some new videos showing progress maybe in a month or so, and because we already got like a monkey with a wireless implant in their skull and the tiny wires, who can play video games using his mind. And he's totally
really, that's amazing.
He looks totally normal and happy. So it does not look like an unhappy monkey. And you can't even see where the neural implant was put in, except for that he's got like a slight like dark mohawk. But other than that,
slight one, just a small.
Yeah, it doesn't look. He's not uncomfortable, and he doesn't look weird. So we're oh, and I was like when the USDA person came through and inspected our facilities, our monkey facilities, she said it was like the nicest monkey facilities she's ever seen in her entire career. Just FYI. We went the extra mile for the monkeys.
as long as you didn't make them play Cyberpunk.
that would be a hell of a trip for a monkey. But one of the things we're trying to figure out is like, can we have the monkeys play mind pong with each other? That would be pretty cool.
I have to say the pig demo was really fantastic. That was really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, it's a great team at Neuralink and making good progress. And like I said, I want to be clear. Like, the early applications will really just be for people who've had a serious brain injury, like where it's like the value of the implant would be enormous, because obviously the early implants will come with some non-trivial risk, and so it's got to be like, okay, does the good far outweigh the bad, and then that would be a candidate for some of the initial surgeries with full disclosure of like these little risks and everything. And one of the things we're really paying close attention to is the ability to remove the implant. So it's not like if somebody doesn't want it or it's not working, we can take it out and then we can reimplant another one. So we've tested implantation, removal, and reimplantation, and it works great.
Sorry, Mark.
Switching top. Yeah, please. So switching topics. So Elon, as I mentioned kids earlier, as it turns out, I have a very bright and inquisitive 5-year-old who is crawling all over everything and trying to figure everything out and learning as much as he can as fast as he can. Like, what, with everything that we know now and kind of all the modern tools that we have, like, what's the best way to think about educating a 5-year-old in today's world?
Sorry, the best way to educate a 5-year-old?
Yeah, educate a 5-year-old and then think about kind of his education over the course of the next, 5 or 10 years. Like, what kind of program ideally should you think a kid should be on?
Well, my observation is my kids were mostly educated by YouTube and Reddit, and then and their, I guess, classmates and I guess there were lessons as well, but judging by the amount of time they spent online, it seemed like most of their education is actually coming from online. I think generally with education, you want to make it as interesting and exciting as possible. You have to say, like, what are some of the, like, if you see, like what are all the things, like, say, a good video game does to keep someone engaged and interested? if kids can be super engaged in video games, I think there's a way for them to be super engaged in education as well. Like one of the things that's I think very fundamental is to explain the why of things. Like, so we're teaching you this, but we're going to explain why we're teaching you this and why it is relevant. I mean, we've evolved to forget things that are irrelevant or have low relevance probability. It makes sense. Like otherwise, we'd remember all sorts of nonsense things that weren't very important to our future. So unless relevance is established clearly, then people will have a hard time remembering it by its nature, because it appears to be irrelevant. It might be relevant, but if it's not explained to them, they won't know. And then if you want to have some sort of if you're trying to say problem solving, some sort of engaging narrative for the problem solving, like it's like far better to say, okay, if we're going to teach you how an engine works by taking apart an engine and then putting it back together, and then let's find out what tools are needed for in order to take this engine apart and put it back together. It's like, okay, we need screwdrivers and wrenches and Allen keys, and we need a winch, and a bunch of other things, and then you understand the relevance, and it's much more of an interesting problem. This is much better than having, say, a course on wrenches or a course on screwdrivers. You just like start with a problem and say what tools are needed to solve this problem. That establishes relevance and gives a compelling narrative thread.
Yeah, it seems like you could kind of, if you had sort of elaborate enough projects, you could roll a huge number of topics into that ultimately kind of combine into a single project with some really actually interesting form of output. Like for example, building a literally building a vehicle or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. If you have the narrative thread, or like why is it all establish relevance, and there's a story to it, and then you say like, well, if you can't turn that bolt without the wrench, and then like let's see, how can we make this engine better? What do we need to do? Okay, well, let's calculate if it's a gasoline engine, how do you get to a higher RPM or a better compression ratio? I'm using like an outdated analogy of engines, but you could say for an electric motor, what steps would you need to take to get higher torque, and pull higher power out of this electric motor, and then you can explain. It's obvious why things like Maxwell's equations become necessary in that situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be amazing. Go ahead.
Yeah. Elon, you would not believe the number of parents and people with kids who have asked us about tonight. And I think there are two questions that are connected. One is, how do kids, if you're having a kid and you want to teach them to become a polymath like you have become, what advice you have for parents? And the next one is, here you are with, so many companies that you have created that I can't even list them off the top of my head. Why doesn't the world have, and this doesn't mean to sound, psychophantic, but why doesn't the world have more Elon Musks?
Well, I don't know. I might be getting too much credit here. So, I mean, for me, these things, the things I've done have been because I felt a strong compulsion to do them. So it's not like nobody was pushing me to do it, but it was just like I felt a strong compulsion to do them. I mean, I wouldn't say, there were pretty long sections of my life that have been very painful and difficult, and I'm not sure people would want to do that, there's if somebody wants to be me or do the things I've done, I would say most probably you're mistaken. You do not want to do that. You'd have to have some kind of like rage demon in your skull that you just got to get it done. It's like when people ask me like, what encouraging words do you have for entrepreneurs who want to do a startup? And my response is, if you need encouraging words, don't do a startup.
Oh.
I quote my friend Bill Lee, doing a startup is like eating glass and staring into the abyss.
Yep.
For a long time.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. We're going to switch topics just a second, but I think for everyone in the audience who just caught up and managed to squeeze in, just a quick reset/recap. This is the one and only Elon Musk for his first time on Clubhouse, and this is a show that we do every single day. I know a lot of you are trying to get in the room. There are a bunch of overflow rooms. See if we can get in there. But we're just having an amazing conversation with Elon. Elon, okay. This is something you've joked about, but I'm kind of curious to get your, maybe serious answer to this, which is all things cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. You famously just changed your Twitter bio to just the Bitcoin logo and the word Bitcoin this week. What do you think of cryptocurrency? What do you think of Bitcoin? What do you think of other, cryptocurrencies? We'd love to get your take on the entire thing.
Well, yeah, I got to watch what I say here because some of these things can really move the market. So, first of all, I should say, many friends of mine have tried to convince me to get involved in Bitcoin for a long time, like from when it first just popped, it popped out there. And a friend of my bully, he actually had Bitcoin cake, a cake that was had a big sort of Bitcoin symbol on it, and he fed me a slice of Bitcoin cake in 2013. So, I mean, clearly I should have at least bought some Bitcoin 8 years ago. What more do people need to do? Jesus, talk about being late. Talk about being late to the party. So I was a little slow on the uptake there. My apologies. But I think about it a fair bit. But I do at this point think Bitcoin is a good thing. So I am a supporter of Bitcoin. Like I said, I'm late to the party, but I'm a supporter of Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin is really on the verge of getting broad acceptance by sort of the conventional finance people, So, yeah, I think so. I don't have a strong opinion on other cryptocurrencies. I mean, occasionally I make jokes about Dogecoin, but they are really just meant to be jokes. But Dogecoin was made as a joke to make fun of cryptocurrencies, obviously. But fate loves irony, and often, as a friend of mine says, the most ironic outcome is the most likely, or as I like to say, the most entertaining outcome is often the most likely, and arguably the most entertaining outcome and the most ironic outcome would be that Dogecoin becomes the currency of Earth in the future.
Awesome.
Oh my God. Elon, when you tweeted me this afternoon, I will say my tweet replies have been overwhelmed by probably a zillion different cryptocurrency coins. But yeah. And by the way, you might remember the infamous time when your replies were filled with cryptocurrency bots on Twitter.
Oh my God. It was insane. Yeah.
That was actually how Elon and I actually wound up meeting, because that was a very painful time. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, and then I made a joke about Bitcoin, and my account got locked.
Yeah. I had to actually try and convince some folks that was actually the real Elon Musk and try and get his account unblocked.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to bring us back to one of your companies. We actually have a Tesla Model S sitting outside our house right now. It carries us and our 2-year-old baby around, and we love it. Would love to just get your take on where you see you just have a refresh of the Model S coming out. I just saw the review for it. Where do you just see the future for Tesla, and especially when it comes to all things battery technology and self-driving? Those two topics I think a lot of people are very interested in.
Okay, so you're asking me about the future of batteries and self-driving?
More like actually, where do you see Tesla over the next few years?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that, the goal with Tesla is to, and has been from the beginning, is to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy. So in order to do that, we've got to make a lot of cars. We've got to make them increasingly affordable. And our rough target is we want to be able to eventually make 20 million cars a year. And the reason for that is there's 2 billion active cars and trucks on the road, and figure if you're not really moving the needle unless you're changing 1% of the existing fleet. And so that's roughly how we came up with 20 million cars and trucks per year. That's very important to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy. And then, of course, we've got stationary battery packs and solar, which is making a lot of progress on that front. So yeah, we're going to try to grow car production as fast as possible, and that the primary limiting factor there is battery cell production. So we're getting as much as possible from suppliers, and then but even that is not enough. So we're actually going to be building battery cells ourselves. But it's important to emphasize that to our suppliers who are great, we've got great suppliers, that we're not trying to put them out of business. We want them to increase their rate as well. So Panasonic, LG, and CATL, and then to add, to increase to accelerate sustainable energy further, we're making our own cells, pretty excited about that. And then, anyway, so I think you expect, possibly an acceleration of compound annual growth. Well, at least aspirationally, that's our goal. And then combine that with autonomy, and it's a very powerful story because once you have autonomy or self-driving cars, you massively increase the utility of any given car. A typical car is driven about 12 hours a week. You think of maybe depending on the situation where you live, it's like maybe an hour and a half a day or something like that. Or in LA, it might be 2 hours a day. So roughly 12 hours a week, and there's 168 hours in a week, in a 7-day week. So most likely cars that are autonomous could maybe do a third of the hours in the week or something like that. So maybe they do, 60 hours a week of usage instead of 12. So you got basically a 5x increase in asset utilization there, and far less need for parking lots, parking garages, and that kind of thing. So, but this in itself is good for the environment, because you need fewer cars to get the same thing done, and we would need fewer parking garages and places just to keep cars when they're not in use, because they'd just be in use a lot more. So. But the net of like having a lot of cars times automation or times self-driving, I think, is at the heart of why a lot of investors think Tesla is worth what it is. They're giving us a lot of credit for future execution, but I think the trend is there. It's quite positive. And I'd like to once again say, if anyone is interested in practical AI, AI that where the rubber hits the road, please join Tesla's Autopilot/AI team. I think people don't quite appreciate that Tesla has some of the most advanced AI in the world, both on the software side and on the hardware side. And on the software, on the hardware side, we've obviously got our inference computer, which I think is still the best inference computer out there, even though it's been going for a couple of years. And then we're building Dojo, which will be the world's most powerful training computer, because it's got to process vast amounts of video training data, and bringing the day of self-driving sooner translates directly to lives saved and injuries avoided, because about 1 million people die every year in car accidents, and about 10 million per year have serious injuries. So that's the sooner the better, and a lot of lives will be saved and people's lives made better if it happens sooner.
Elon, on self-driving, you made headlines, I think, a while back when you basically, to put it mildly, criticized LiDAR as a key technology for self-driving. Could you talk more about that and why, you're not such a huge fan of LiDAR?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm just talking smack,
No, we didn't know that.
Yep, it's time you knew.
We took those tweets seriously.
I confess. Yeah. So, first of all, I'm not like fundamentally against LiDAR in all things, because for the SpaceX Dragon that docks with the space station, we actually developed and built our own LiDAR for docking with the space station. So obviously, if I hated LiDAR, we would not have done that. And this is well before. This is like 10 years ago that we started doing that. So I'm not like, I don't have some sort of weird like, antagonism to LiDAR. However, for driving on real world roads, you have to solve vision. You have to solve vision, basically understanding objects with passive optical photons, and then making sense of those objects. So like vision, perception. What do those objects mean? What are they going to do? What is their likely path of travel? And then control. And all of that really is is AI. The way we're doing it is by running a bunch of neural nets in our head. So we got to run a bunch of neural nets to do the same thing in the car. And at the point at which you've solved passive optical, and this is better passive optical than a human has, because you've got 8 cameras, 3 of which point directly forward, 2 that are diagonally forward, and 2 that are diagonally rear, and 1 rear. So the way we do it right now is we have all 8 cameras synchronized with. So you've got 8 frames collected simultaneously, and we're moving towards, and have in fact mostly moved towards video training. So you've got 8 surround cameras. It's like kind of a surreal thing to see, because people look, really, people have 2 eyes, but kind of like really more like 1 eye, because the 2 eyes kind of combine. But anyway, the neural net it needs to move to full video training, video inference, surround video training, surround video inference, and then it will be superhuman, no question about it. There's just, because people don't have eyes in the back of their head. Like you basically have, effectively a human, for all intents and purposes, it's like having 1 camera on a slow gimbal, and that is often distracted, and maybe sort of drunk, or change the radio, or they fall asleep, or there's all sorts of things that go wrong. There's no question that you can be superhuman with just cameras. And I think if one is going to go with sort of active photon generation, I would recommend something in the occlusion penetrating wavelengths. So like radar, at sort of roughly 4 millimeter radar or something like that would be better if you're going to really delve into the arena of active photon generation.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. Okay. Also, I love how deep you got into that. It was super, super fun. All right. I'm going to switch topic just a bit. I would say it's safe to say a lot of people are very interested in how you work. And you often, for example, describe yourself as an engineer. So walk us through, it's Monday morning, you wake up. What does a typical work day in the life of Elon look like?
I guess I wake up and see if there are any emergencies on text or email, and often there are. I mean, a ton of what I deal with is not actually fun or interesting. It's like chores. So I've tried really hard not to do my chores, but then if I don't do my chores, things go to hell. So, oh man, you have to do your chores. So, yeah,
it's kind
basically,
I'm a bit relieved that Elon Musk basically has the same schedule as the rest of us. We all hate chores, and you do too. And it's kind of, there's something just really relieving just hearing you say that.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much how it goes these days. I do enjoy the in-person meetings more than email. In fact, I think I'm getting like a slight like negative like limbic reaction to email. It's killing me. Texts are way better to deal with, and then in-person meetings are much better. Even Zoom meetings or whatever, they're still better than email. Anything's better than email, frankly. So anyway, I'll have a bunch of meetings. I'll write email or write text, especially if it's like an email to the group, like saying, hey, I think we need to change direction and do the following things. And let me know if you think otherwise, but otherwise we've got to do these things and get our act together in this area or that area. And then, yeah, a bunch of meetings. Most of my meetings are engineering and design. But of course we have to deal with finance and, sales and other things. And, the things that are necessary for a company to function. And then there's this quite a lot of context switching. Somebody sent me the meme of like, fear is not the mind killer, context switching is the mind killer, which I totally agree with. Context switching is a real bear. So just try to basically try to do less context switching. So maybe focus on one thing for an hour and then another thing for another hour. It's really hard to context switch between SpaceX and Tesla and all the things that are going on at SpaceX and Tesla, and then Neuralink, Boring Company, which fortunately pretty low bandwidth. They don't take a high level of CPU load because they're smaller, and there's their personal stuff and of course memes. Got to.
That's important. How to schedule them in.
Like, where's my meme? We're expecting a meme by now.
You're calling up your meme dealer for your hit of memes. I love it.
Exactly.
Elon, earlier last year I spoke to Mark about how he spends his time, and Mark talked about when he was younger, he used to have large blocks of open time on his calendar, and I think a lot of well-known founders have large blocks of open time versus scheduled time. Now you are unique because you have multiple companies you're running. You're also much more of an engineer than traditional CEOs. What does your calendar look like? Are you allocated 30 minutes back to back? You have a lot of open space. How do you handle it?
I do not have a lot of open space. It's generally back-to-back meetings, and it's insane. I mean, my days are like insane torrents of information. I mean, sometimes people if you want to like audit what I do for a day, it's insane. I don't recommend it. I mean, yeah. I was thinking, like, man, how long can I keep this up? Because I don't want my brain to explode. And it's like the meetings that are scheduled are not like nice to have meetings. They're like, this meeting is essential. Like, okay, it's pretty intense. I was thinking like maybe I should like at some point like take a week off or something, clear my mind. Or like, I know there's like a bunch of people like writing books on Tesla and SpaceX, for example. Like it's pretty hard for them to get it right because they just weren't there. And maybe I should like write some like book of my experiences that has like all the foolish mistakes I've done and like some advice for others that might be helpful.
I think so. A book, a documentary. I think, I remember once hearing about how do you still sleep on the floor of your factory? I remember you used to at one point in time.
I did. I haven't. I only if there's like a crisis situation, and I actually. It's like basically when the team is being asked to really work super hard, I got to be right there with them. And they got to see it, seeing is believing. And so if I'm just sleeping in the middle of the factory floor and, sort of going to sleep at 4 a.m. and like, waking up like 4 hours later and like, they literally see me, they walk past me. It's not like hidden or anything. And it's like, okay, CEO is willing to fucking take that level of pain, then they'll do it too.
I was going to say, when you first said you slept in the factory, I figured, there must be like an executive floor or something, and you must have like a couch, and it must be like a nice setup. And then, when I came over to see you that one time, it's like you have your conference room is literally in the middle of the factory, and like the giant. Sure, I'm pardon my swearing, but I have to. The giant fucking robots are like 15 feet away.
Yeah.
And they're pounding metal, and it's like ear splitting. And your factory is like literally, your room is like literally right in the middle of them. And then at least I saw your like sleeping bag in the conference room, so I assume that's where you're sleeping. I didn't see any of the rooms. Like, yeah, so it's not just sleeping in the middle of the factory. It's like that's intense.
Most of the time, I did not sleep in the conference room because people could not see me in the conference room. So I slept on the floor outside the conference room. Because otherwise, how do people know? Yep. Like, they don't know. Seeing's believing. So I mostly would just sleep on the floor outside the conference room so they could see that I was there.
Yep, that's an even more advanced level.
Yeah, that's world of hurt. And I always would wake up and smell like oil and iron filings. it was rough. Yeah, but I was asking people to really go all out, and I can't expect them to go all out if I'm not doing the same thing.
That's super interesting because when people think, and again, I'm not saying this to flatter you. When people think that how does the richest person in the world live, they don't think uncomfortably sleeping outside a conference room with like a lot of loud banging going on right next door.
They probably don't, but the people at the factory do. They saw it themselves.
I love it.
That's what's important,
Okay, I love it. Okay, switching topic just a little bit. I think a lot of people, okay, you have your hands full with SpaceX and Tesla, and the Boring Company and Neuralink. If you had to start, if you somehow magically found an extra 5 hours in a day, and you had to start another company or another effort, what would you start?
Well, I'm definitely have no plans to start yet another thing.
You have all the free time.
Man,
look at you.
Yeah, my head will definitely explode.
It's like that gladiator meme. Are you not entertained enough? Have you not created enough companies?
Indeed. I think there are still tremendous opportunities in tunneling. For 5 years, people asked me what do I see opportunities, and I'd say tunneling, and then nobody did anything. So then, actually, initially as a joke, created the Boring Company, we did like a test tunnel in LA, and then still people didn't believe us, and then so we just did our first operational tunnel in Vegas. But the world really needs tunnels because all major cities have traffic, and tunnels can massively improve people's quality of life by making it easier to travel from one place to another in a city. And then that can be further expanded to long distance travel, where if you just draw a vacuum on the tunnel, then you can go extremely fast, faster than a plane, and faster than a plane or a high-speed rail. So I'd really still recommend, can someone else say, please start a tunneling company? That'd be great. Then there's RNA or mRNA, basically synthetic viruses, which is we've seen put to good effect with BioNTech and Moderna. But I think people don't quite appreciate that what's actually going on is the digitization of medicine. So it's where you can just literally, create an RNA or DNA sequence like a computer program, and then encapsulate that in a you have to multiply it many millions of times, billions of times, and encapsulate that in a lipid shell so it looks like a tasty treat for your cells, and you can literally do anything. This is absolutely the future of medicine. When I say it, you could probably figure out how to turn someone into a literal butterfly. Okay, your cells are biological computers. They execute just like a sort of an old school computer where you'd feed it like you'd feed it a tape, or a punch card. That's you feed your cells, which are tiny biological computers, this punch card, and they will do whatever that punch card says. So that was probably a big eye opener for 2020 of like just the understanding the potential of RNA. And then just super randomly, Tesla actually is making a fairly advanced RNA sort of microfab or something where for currently for CureVac, but we're open to making it for other companies as well.
Wait. I don't think I'm not sure I understand this. Why is Tesla making an RNA fab?
It's super random. So, like a little over 4 years ago, we acquired a company in Germany, primarily for they're very good at automation. It's called they were called Groman, and they're in southern Germany near basically a city of Prum, and at the time of the acquisition, they said like, look, we're willing to be acquired, but there's like just a couple of projects that we think, even though they're not related to automotive, we'd really like to continue if you don't mind. As like, and the two projects were one is this like tiny chip analyzer, or like a thing with tiny wires for analyzing chips that Intel needs for making CPUs, and then another one was this biotech thing for it's basically there's three parts to it. There's a DNA multiplier, an RNA multiplier, and something which puts then the lipid shell on the RNA sequence. We're on like version 3 of it now, and they said could they keep going? I said, well, if you keep it under 10% of resources, no problem, we can keep going. And then I don't know, it turned out like it turns out it may actually be useful.
I just love that you accidentally found yourself with an RNA fab. By the way, I think you've been talking a lot about how mRNA obviously has been key to the Moderna vaccines and all the COVID-19 vaccines, which brings me to COVID. Let us say somehow magically tomorrow you were running the vaccine effort, the distribution effort right now. What would you do to get the vaccines out?
Yeah, specifically around the delivery and the logistics side, which we just don't seem to be doing a really good job across the world. So what would you do differently there?
Well, I don't have good insight into the situation as it stands, but I think relaxing the requirements on there's like seems to be there are too many requirements of who can get the vaccine. The vaccine really is important for anyone with that is elderly or has a compromised immune system, or is otherwise at risk for the virus. And I think really just saying like, you know, first come, first served. Show up here. Like use CVS and Walgreens, which give out the flu vaccine every year, and say, okay, just show up here, and you know, especially for the Moderna and BioNTech vaccines, which are quite temperature sensitive, they can only be sort of defrosted from the deep freeze briefly, and then they must be used or they lose their effectiveness. This is because my understanding is the RNA because the RNA sequences they use are not stable. Those sequences want to revert to something else. Because they're not stable, they must be frozen at a very low temperature, or they will simply want to revert to a lower energy state RNA sequence. That's my understanding of it. So just like instead of worrying about like this, is the exact right person going to get the vaccine? Like just accept that maybe some people who shouldn't get the vaccine will get it, but we will still get a hell of a lot more vaccines out there. And let's not worry about the details here. Let's just get it to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. And for sure, we should not worry about the second dose quite yet. Just give everyone the first dose. I suspect that the immunity granted by the first dose is very significant. And we got, you know, that third dose, the second dose is like I think 3 or 4 weeks later. So we've got plenty of time to think about the second dose. Just worry about the first dose and first come, first served, and don't worry about like accidentally giving the damn thing to someone who maybe didn't deserve it. That will happen a little bit. So that's my recommendation on that front. We are going to be there is going to be an avalanche of vaccine coming. I think the U.S. may have ordered something like 900 million doses stepwise. And the combination of there's going to be we were going to have so much COVID vaccine. I guarantee you it will be thrown away later this year. more than we could possibly ever need or want. And the Johnson & Johnson vaccine just got approved, which is that's good because it's a more conventional vaccine, but it's a single shot, room temperature. And there are more and more vaccines that are going to get approved. Hopefully the CureVac one will be approved soon. I know because I know the Tesla machine, it can make a bazillion doses super fast. So, I think there's definitely, for those who are concerned about the vaccine, you should expect an exponential increase in vaccine availability. And then combined with that, we are, I think, starting to approach some degree of herd immunity with people who have contracted the virus and recovered. So, which is actually better than getting a vaccine. The antibody reaction is better than if you got the vaccine. So, could go on and on about it, but overall, I think optimistic message that there will be lots of vaccines, and I would really encourage people to take the vaccine. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I want to be clear. I'm a pro-vaxxer.
So, speaking of the vaccine, California has been sort of bouncing between kind of 45th and 50th in the country, by states in terms of the speed of the rollout. And it for me, it sort of, it re-raises this question that's been coming up more and more, which is, you and I and a lot of people, here listening have built our companies, primarily in California up until now. What's your view on the future of California from here?
Well, I mean, first of all, I should say I love California, and I've lived more than half my life in California. Just I am, Californian. Like so much of my. I mean, I built my companies here. Came here came to Silicon Valley as a summer intern to work on energy storage technology for electric vehicles. Way back in 92, I think it was 92 or 93. There's a little company called Pinnacle Research in Los Gatos. I got to Silicon Valley as soon as I could. And then at Stanford, I was going to be working on sort of advanced capacitors for use in electric vehicles as grad studies, and ended up putting that on hold for the internet. And try to get a job at Netscape, by the way.
So I have heard that story indirectly. I would actually like for you to tell it so that I can learn what mistake I made.
Okay, well, first of all, I wouldn't say I did a very good job of trying to get a job at Netscape, but I was convinced that the internet would be the future. Essentially, the humanity communicated by osmosis until then, but with the internet, it would be like humanity acquiring a nervous system and becoming much more of a superorganism. And so I was like, okay, well, I could do a PhD at Stanford on sort of advanced capacitors for use in electric vehicles, which may or may not be successful. I could get the PhD, but would it be useful or not? Uncertain. Or I could be part of building the internet, which was so it's either do the PhD and watch the internet get built right in front of me, or put grad studies on hold and try to help build the internet in some way. And you're basically the only internet company. So I sent my resume, and I was like, didn't get any feedback. And then I tried hanging out in the lobby, but I was too shy to speak to anyone. And I was like, man, what a charlatan I am sitting in this lobby.
Oh, wow.
And then I just started writing software myself because I was like, okay, well, I'll just write software myself. And I actually wrote the first maps and directions on the internet. I'm not sure how many people are aware of that, but the first maps, directions, yellow pages, and white pages, I wrote it personally. It's just me and my computer. And when we started our first company, we only had one computer. So the website only worked during the day because I was coding at night, and then the server ran during the day. So that was quite an adventure, that's for sure. Yeah.
So I just want to let you know that the next time you show up at one of my companies and hang out in the lobby for an internship, you're going to get an internship.
Wow, thanks, man.
Yeah. But only if you get the stuff running 24/7. Like you can't slack off at night. Yeah, you have to keep it running.
Yeah, no sleeping outside the conf rooms. That's not okay.
Yeah.
We will provide you with not just one but two computers.
Nice.
Okay. I want to wrap up with some light questions for you, which I think a lot of people are curious in. What are you watching on TV? What are you reading right now? Well,
I just finished watching The Last Kingdom, which I think is a great piece of mostly accurate historical drama. There's Cobra Kai, which is if you grew up in
it's so good.
It's so good. It's such a sick burn, that show. My goodness. I mean, they just like turn the knife constantly. Let's see, what else have we been watching?
What do you if I can break it? What do you think of The Expanse?
Maybe I should start watching that. I think there were like some sort of like things about like having a shortage of water or something. There's something like that didn't make any scientific sense at first, so I was like, come on, this is dumb. So then I stopped watching it. But it sounds like maybe I should keep watching it. I need to watch something on the treadmill, otherwise I won't work out because I hate working out.
Yeah, I think you'll find. I mean, I think season 4 now. I think you'll find it's apparently. I think you'll know more than I will, but the sort of most accurate representation of what actual like interplanetary travel would be like. Once it's sort of made routine. And by the way, the politics that flow, right? And so it sort of sets up a three-way battle between basically Earth and Mars, and then the asteroid belt, and kind of gets into all the.
It's entirely possible in the future. I would say that would be a good outcome because it means that humanity's actually made it out there, as long as they don't annihilate each other. Besides the Expanse, I mean, what do you recommend?
Oh, have you seen? I think I've got one for. Oh, I just got to bring one up. Devs, spelled D-E-V-S.
Devs. Yes.
If you have not seen Devs, Dev is definitely the show for you, and I will not say any more, but you will enjoy it.
All right, Devs. A game that's pretty good is Mythic Quest.
Yes.
Yes.
Amazing.
Oh my God, my favorite.
Best Apple TV show.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Did you see the Ravens Banquet, the most recent one?
Yeah, it's great.
So good.
Have you seen Tenet yet? The new Christopher Nolan movie?
Yes, it's pretty good.
Wow. Okay. And did you understand Tenet?
Well, I think if you think too hard about Tenet, it's not going to make maybe complete sense. But I enjoyed the movie.
It's funny because that's kind of what Nolan said too in one of the interviews. He said, just don't go deep into it. Just enjoy it for the movie. And 4 hours later, I emerged from Reddit being like, I still don't entirely get it. So I should have just paid, just skimmed through it and just watched it for the fun of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Elon. I think we don't want to take up too much of your time. This has been amazing. You've pretty much broken Clubhouse. There are probably about over a dozen, maybe more overflow rooms, and I see so many Twitter trends right now. You've been so generous. For all your listeners here and on Twitter, you've been asking for people to join Neuralink. You've been asking people to join Tesla. Do you have any final thoughts for everybody who's listening to you right now?
Well, do you want to hear the real story from Vlad from Robinhood about what happened this week with GameStop?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, you need to let him somehow click on a button so he can talk.
All right, let me figure this out.
While we're figuring it out, Elon, why don't you talk to us about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, since you mentioned that right at the beginning?
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams is in fact a book of philosophy disguised as a silly humor book. And if you read it from the standpoint of, wow, this is an interesting book of philosophy, it's quite insightful. As mentioned, he really hits on the point of the answer is easy once you can properly formulate the question. I like the fact that the ship is powered by infinite improbability. It's called the Heart of Gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's um, he makes fun of bureaucracy. In fact, Earth essentially gets destroyed by a sort of clerical error or by the or, I mean, essentially, well, not even clerical error. They basically decide that they need to have an interstellar highway, and that Earth's in the way, and so they post the fact that Earth needs to get destroyed for this interstellar highway. But of course, it's posted on an alien bulletin board that no one on Earth can access, and so then they're surprised when people on Earth are unhappy about this. It's like, it was posted on the board. What do you mean? We're like, what board? Some of the things in Doug Sadler's book, like the babble fish, where you put the fish in your ear that automatically translates, we kind of have that already. So yeah, I mean, the future is coming fast.
Elon, okay. Vlad, can you hear us?
Vlad the Stock Impaler.
Hey guys, thanks for inviting me up. It's good to hang with all of you.
All right, Vlad. What really happened? Give us the inside scoop.
All right. Well, I was actually hoping that you would invite me up for the Fermi paradox part, because this has been a very surreal weekend and week for me. One of the really great things is all the people coming out of the woodwork to offer support for the company, offer, advice. So I got introduced today, and actually I should say I just randomly downloaded Clubhouse a couple of days ago just to see what it was all about. So this is my first time literally using the app. But yeah, I got introduced to your friend Antonio, Elon, who had some good advice for me, and then introduced me to you. You had some great advice. And then I figured, I heard about this Clubhouse, and this has got to be part of the simulation. So I just thought, why not? So here I am. So I'm actually an adherent to the simulation hypothesis.
All right. Well, spill the beans, man. What happened last week? Why do you stop people? Why couldn't people buy the GameStop shares? The people demand an answer, and they want to know the details and the truth.
Yep. Okay, so let me start by giving a little bit of background. So I'm the chief executive of Robinhood. Robinhood is actually a.
Just go on.
I'll go through this quickly. Don't worry. This is important. It's actually a couple of companies. So there's an introducing broker dealer called Robinhood Financial, and that basically is the app that you know and love. It processes trades. You're a customer of Robinhood Financial. Then there's a clearing broker dealer, Robinhood Securities, that clears and settles the trades. And then we have Robinhood Crypto, which is our crypto business. All of these are kind of different entities that are differently operated. So basically Wednesday of last week, we just had, unprecedented volume, unprecedented load on the system. A lot of these, so-called meme stocks were, going viral on social media, and people were joining Robinhood, and there was a lot of net buy activity on them, as you guys all know. And Robinhood at this time, I think, was #1 on the iOS App Store, and pretty close, if not #1 on Google Play as well. So just unprecedented activity. And so Thursday morning, right? So I'm sleeping, but at 3:30 a.m. Pacific, our operations team receives a file from the NSCC, which is the National Securities Clearing Corporation. So basically, as a broker, as a clearing broker, and this is where Robinhood Securities comes in, we have to put up money to the NSCC based on some factors, including things like the volatility of the trading activity, concentration into certain securities, and this is the equities business. So it's based on stock trading and not options trading or anything else. So they gave us a file with a deposit, and the request was around $3 billion. which is, about an order of magnitude more than what it typically is, right? So
no, why was that so high? Like, this seems like it sounds like this is an unprecedented increase in demand for capital. What formula did they use to calculate that?
Well, yeah, and just to give context, Robinhood up until that point has raised, a little bit, around $2 billion in total venture capital up until now. So it's a big number. Like $3 billion is a large number, right? So basically the details are, we don't have the full details. It's a little bit of an opaque formula, but there's a component called the VAR of it, which is value at risk. And that's based on kind of some fairly quantitative things, although it's not fully transparent. So there are ways to reverse engineer it, but it's not kind of publicly shared. And then there's a special component, which is discretionary. So that kind of acts as a multiplier. And basically discretionary meaning like it's just their opinion. Yeah, it's a little bit, I mean, I'm sure there's definitely more than just their opinion, but basically, well, I mean, I guess like it's based on growth. What everyone wants to know is like, did something maybe shady go down here? It's like, it seems weird that you'd get a sudden $10 billion demand, $3 billion in the morning. Sorry, how much? Yeah. It was $3 billion US dollars. $3 billion. Okay, $3 billion. Yeah, around. Just suddenly out of nowhere. And what percentage? I wouldn't impute shadiness to it or anything like that. And actually, the NSCC was reasonable subsequent to this, and they worked with us to actually lower it. So it was unprecedented activity. I don't have the full context about what was going on in the NSCC to make these calculations, but yeah, essentially, is anyone holding you hostage right now? No, I'm okay. Yeah. Thanks for asking. But anyway, so this was obviously nerve-wracking, and I actually was asleep at this point. The operations team was fielding this at 3:00, and then we got back, we put our heads together. Our chief operating officer basically said, "Look, let's call up the higher ups at the NSCC and kind of figure out what's going on. Maybe there's some way we can work with them." And basically, there was another call, and they lowered it to something like $1.4 billion from $3 billion. Okay. So, we were making some progress, right? And then, but it's still a high number. And then we basically proposed, well, let's explain how we plan to, let's explain how, we'll manage risk in these symbols throughout the day. We proposed marking these volatile stocks that were kind of driving the activity, position closing only. And then at about an hour before market open, so 5:30 or 5 in the morning, they came back and they said, okay, the charge is, or the deposit, $700 million, which we then deposited and paid promptly, and then everything was fine. So that essentially explains why we had to mark these symbols position closing only, and also why we knew this was a bad outcome for customers. Part of what's been really difficult is Robinhood stands for democratizing access to stocks, and we want to give people the access. So that's been very, very challenging. But we had no choice in this case. We had to conform to our regulatory capital requirements, and so the team did what they could to make sure we were available for customers. Who controls this organization, this clearinghouse? It's a consortium. It's not quite a government agency. I don't really know the details of all of that.
Okay.
But and to be fair, like we were I think there was legitimate sort of turmoil in the markets. Like these are unprecedented events with these meme stocks, and there was a lot of activity. So there probably is some amount of extra risk in the system that warrants higher requirements. So it's not entirely unreasonable. But we did operational processes to make sure that customers that had positions could sell their open positions, because obviously restricting someone, we got a lot of questions about, okay, you had to restrict buying, why didn't you also restrict selling? And the fact of the matter is, people get really pissed off if they're holding stock and they want to sell it and they can't, right? So I think that's categorically worse. So and lots of other brokers, I think, were in the same situation. Robinhood was in the news, but you sort of heard this industry wide, right? Other brokers basically restricted the same exact activity.
All right, so it sounds like this organization, calls you up and they basically have a gun to your head, either hand over this money or else. And so, because I mean, like basically what people are wondering is like, did you sell your clients down the river, or do you have no choice? And if you had no choice, that's understandable. But then, we got to find out why you had no choice, and who are these people that are saying you have no choice?
Yeah, I think that's fair. We have to comply with these requirements. Financial institutions have requirements. The formula behind these requirements, I think it would obviously be ideal if there was a little bit more transparency so we could plan better around that. But to be fair, we were able to open and serve our customers, and 24 hours later, our team raised over $1 billion in capital, so that when we did open, when we do open tomorrow morning, we'll be able to kind of relax the stringent position limits that we put on these securities on Friday.
Will there be any limits?
Well, I think there's always going to be some theoretical limit. Like we don't have infinite capital, right? And on Friday there were limits. So there's always going to have to be some limit. I think the question is, will the limits be high enough to the point where, they won't impact, 99.9+% of customers. So, if someone were to deposit $100 billion and decide to trade in one stock like that wouldn't be possible,
All right. All right. Well, I guess people really just want to know, if you had no choice, then you had no choice. It's gun to the head situation. And, then that's understandable. But then whoever put that gun to your head should, be willing to answer to the public.
Yeah, listen, and I know there's processes. This is unprecedented times, and to be fair to those guys, they've been reasonable. So I think the one thing that is maybe not clear to people is Robinhood's a participant in the financial system, so we have to work with all of these counterparties. So we do get a lot of questions about, why do you work with market makers? Why do you work with clearing houses? Vertically integrating and getting, it's hard enough to build introducing a clearing broker dealer. Not too many people have done that, but the financial system that allows customers to trade shares is sort of a complex web of multiple parties, and it's hard to. I think everyone says, oh, it could be better, it could be improved. It's just the necessity of trading equities in the U.S. that you have to do all these things.
I mean, to what degree are you beholden to Citadel? I mean, like basically, if Citadel's unhappy, then what happens?
Yeah, so that, there was a rumor that Citadel or other market makers kind of pressured us into doing this, and that's just false, right? Market makers execute our trades. They execute trades of every broker dealer. This was a clearinghouse. This was a clearinghouse decision, and it was just based on the capital requirements. So, from our perspective, Citadel and other market makers weren't involved in that.
But wouldn't they have a strong say in who got put in charge of that organization, since it's an industry consortium, not a government consortium, or not a government regulatory agency?
I don't have any reason to believe that. I think that's just like, then you're getting into kind of the conspiracy theories a little bit. So I just have no reason to believe that that's the case,
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll see what happens with future actions. Hopefully that was insightful, or at least a little bit entertaining. Are you not entertained?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know what to say. First of all, Vlad, thank you so much for jumping on. I know it's pretty late, and thank you so much. Deeply, I deeply appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone in the audience here and watching elsewhere deeply appreciate it. So thank you so much. We really appreciate this. I'm going to wrap this up. Elon, what can I say? Thank you so much. I hope you had a fun time for your first time on Clubhouse. Did you have fun?
Yeah, it's great. This is awesome. I didn't even know it existed a week ago, so it seems cool.
Awesome. So would you come back?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And also thank you everyone for listening in. I know we went way over, Elon. Elon, we every time we do this show, we try and pick a song that fits the person we're interviewing. So I'm going to play us out of the show with a song that I think you might like. Gary, hit it.